Welcome to part B of my presentation on airspace. In this section we'll be going over special use airspace, and I'll give you a summary of all that we'll be going over in a moment. This page of my website, BayAreaFlyingLessons.com, I'm at the links page, and I just wanted to point out where you can find the skyvector.com chart viewer that I've been using all these tabs for to show you different areas of the country all at once. So, again, I'll be going over special use airspace. I'm going to give a quick summary of special use airspace and then take you through various different parts of the country to show you what it looks like on the chart. So, special use airspace is mainly used by the military and the government for various different reasons. More information on many of these areas is given on VFR charts, at the side of a chart on one of the panels, or at the top of a chart on a border strip, and you'll find things like the airspace's time of effective use, or its altitude limits, and the controlling agency that you contact for permission to go through it, or more information on that airspace. We're going to go through a prohibited area, like they have in Washington, D.C. around the White House, restricted areas, alert areas, military operations areas, air defense identification zone, warning area, military training routes, national security area, terminal radar service area, special conservation area like wildlife refuges, and then take a look at the Grand Canyon Special Flight Rules area and chart, and then take a look at temporary flight restrictions to finish off. So, starting with the prohibited area, this is the Washington, D.C. area. This is where the Capitol Mall area is, the Capitol Building and the Washington Monument. And you can see it here. It says, warning, avoid prohibited area. And I'll zoom in on this area in just a second. Just wanted to point out that there's also a restricted area here that goes out about 30 miles from the prohibited area. And this blue hatching that they use for restricted and prohibited is also used for warning areas as well. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit now. Oh, I'm not going to zoom in because I'm already zoomed in all the way. Okay, that's as big as I can make it. Well, this prohibited area, there's a piece of it here and then another piece of it here, is an area that you're typically not going to be able to fly into. If you are a law enforcement aircraft or the military, then you can fly through it, but otherwise civilians pretty much aren't going to get permission to fly through a prohibited area. It is possible for you to fly through a restricted area, even if it's active, if you get permission from the controlling agency to go into the restricted area. And if the restricted area is not in effect because it's not the correct time span for it to be in effect, then it's like it's not even there and you can fly through. To show a restricted area a little bit closer to home, to the San Francisco Bay Area, I'm going here to Tracy. We have a restricted area just east of the Bay Area. And this is a small restricted area here, R2531. And if you take that restricted area number and you go to the, on the San Francisco sectional chart, it's the north side of the chart. We're on the south side right now, the south side. And if you go to the north side at the top, you'll see this strip. And you can see where the legend would be. And then I'm going to point out right here, it says Special Use Airspace on the San Francisco sectional chart. And you want to make sure and read all the notes. I won't go through them in detail now, but they'll mention things like are the altitude starting at the ground level, or are they starting from whatever altitude they say up to 18,000 feet. So there's various different notes there. But if I look here for R2531, the restricted area by Tracy, It says to but not including 4,000 feet, so that means it goes from the surface up to 3999 feet, and that's an MSL altitude, as stated here at the top. Its particular time of use is 10 o'clock local to 8:50 local, or 20:50 local, Monday through Friday, and occasionally Saturday and Sunday by NOTAM, but 24 hours in advance. And then if you want to go through that restricted area, it's so small they probably would refuse you anyway, but if you did want to try to get permission to go through that restricted area, you contact NorCal TRACON or Terminal Radar Approach Control on 123.85. And then I'm going to scroll over a little bit, and you can see this first section covers all of the blue airspace that shares the same blue hatching, and it would cover prohibited, restricted, warning, and they're mentioning alert, but alert actually has magenta hatching like MOAs now, and they do and they're just mentioning MOA here, but MOA and the alert areas are actually use the same hatching, but it's a magenta color, and you can see here where they shift over to MOAs and it's magenta color. So I'm going to go back to that chart for the San Francisco area to show our next airspace. I'm going a bit to the north. And this is Travis Air Force Base. They have DC-10s, I guess they call them KC-10s, and C-5B Galaxies, the big military transports, and C-141 transports. So they have a decent amount of student activity when they do training on making approaches in those aircraft. So those aircraft make gigantic traffic patterns out here to approach Travis on an ILS approach, for example, an instrument landing system approach. And they want you to know that that activity is there, so they alert you to that by outlining an alert area. They take this magenta hatching and outline an area, and then they label it A682 for alert number 682. And if you were interested in not just the lateral limits, but what the vertical limits of that would be, then we go back to the border of the chart. And here we find A682 north and south. The north side, the airspace goes from the surface to 6,000 feet MSL, and the south side to 3,000 MSL. The time of use would be 8 o'clock to 9 o'clock Monday through Friday. And no air-ground communication is necessary. You can actually fly through an alert area, whether it's active or not. You just need to be more alert. There's no such thing as a clearance to fly through an alert area. And very similar to the alert area is the military operation area. This alert area for Travis in this case is for traffic pattern work by large aircraft, flying large traffic patterns. And a lot of the MOA activity would be stuff like you saw in Top Gun, like dogfighting and aerial refueling and all kinds of things like that. But for a military operation area, I'm going to go back to the previous chart and zoom out a little bit. I'm going to go up to the northern part of the chart. And here you can see that border section I was talking about. You can see the border area here where we're looking at, although it's zoomed out compared to what we were looking at. And they have these rather large Maxwell MOAs, Maxwell 1, 2, and 3. And they all have different information on the border strip. So I'm going to go back to the border strip and see if I can find that. Oh, sorry, I made a mistake. They all have the same information on the border strip. So here, let's see if I can zoom in one more time, make it a little bit more clear. There we go. So Maxwell 1, 2, and 3, it says 11,000 or 3,000 feet AGL, whichever is higher, and the time 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday, and Oakland Center is the agency that handles that, and the frequency to contact them on for information. And then there's a very important note at the end of all the MOAs. This is the last of the MOA data blocks or information, and it says the listed altitude indicates the floor of the MOA. All MOAs extend up to but do not include flight level 180, which is 18,000 feet, unless otherwise indicated on the chart. So that means that when you look back at the MOA, that if you're flying less than 11,000 feet in this area, you're not even in the military operation area. It would only cover from 11 to 18,000 feet, and unless you were flying within 3,000 feet of the ground, and there's one small spot in here where a mountain goes slightly over 8,000 feet, and then the military aircraft is not going to fly less than 3,000 feet AGL. So that's the military operations area, and the next area I was going to get into is the warning area. So if we go off the coast here, a little bit of California, you can see a warning area, and I'll try to zoom in a bit. So here we're off the coast of California, a little bit north of San Francisco, and the warning area uses the same blue hatching as the prohibited area and the restricted area. And warning areas are typically for military activity, the Navy firing cruise missiles or drones and things like that. So most of the time the warning areas, at least in California, wind up being offshore. There are a few spots in Southern California where they come onshore, and I would just try to avoid those areas. They're mostly international water, and they can't prohibit the flight through them, but I would try to avoid them voluntarily just for your own safety. And then we have the Air Defense Identification Zone is here as well. So this kind of double dotted magenta, the single line, is the Air Defense Identification Zone, and that goes all along the east and west coast as well as the southern border. And if you're going to cross that Air Defense Identification Zone, you need to have a IFR flight plan or Defense VFR flight plan, and there are other requirements, like if you're going to go outside the country and come back in, you're going to have to notify customs and fill out various forms and land at an airport of entry, and it's a lot of work, but I don't want to make you think that it's not worth it to go to a place like Mexico or the Caribbean or something like that. So, wildlife refuges. We have a lot of wildlife refuges in the San Francisco area just offshore, and I'll zoom into that area. So it's a little bit hard to see, but most of the shoreline around San Francisco shows, the shore shows blue dots along the shoreline, and those are actually indicating that that's the start of a wildlife refuge. In this case, it's a little bit hard to see on the video, but this particular one is the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary. You can see the single solid blue line with the blue dots out here far out into the ocean, showing the western extent, and the marine sanctuary goes all the way to the coast. And then if we go a little farther up, you can see the Gulf of the Farallones Natural Marine Sanctuary as well. And these are not just offshore. It's quite difficult to see, but if we switch over to the terminal area chart for San Francisco, oh, that's probably better anyway because they show up a little bit better. There's actually one in the East Bay. So you can see right here, San Francisco Bay National Wildlife Refuge, and it starts up here just outside of Oakland's airspace and continues on down towards Leslie Salt and San Jose. So if you're flying near one of these, there's typically an altitude label that says that they'd like the pilots to stay above 2,000 feet. So I'm going to try to find one of those for us.